Hello, this is Dr. Paul Cottrell, and I'm recording this on October 10th before the market open. So we're going to go over the economic data that came out for core CPI and new claims for unemployment. And we're going to go over what's going on in the Middle East, maybe a little bit about the election and anything that comes up with the hurricane. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video. It's the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get Max 35 or Max 14. This is part of my health protocol, anti-aging protocol. Take a teaspoon of this a day. If you're not feeling well, take a tablespoon or two a day, especially during the cold season. Swish in your mouth, gargle, 20 seconds or so, swallow it. It will neutralize pathogens and maintain that mucosal barrier. Get the structural nanosilver soaps. These structural nanosilver soaps are high quality, will help to neutralize pathogens. But in addition, I have it in 5 different varieties. And the 2 varieties that I'm showing on the screen here are the lemongrass and the charcoal tea tree. So please go to my store and pick up a couple bars for your household. They're very high quality soaps, much better than the Procter & Gamble stuff that you buy at the store because their products are full of chemicals. The structural nanosilver toothpaste, very high quality toothpaste. This is going to be the best toothpaste that you can buy. So go to my store, get a few tubes of this toothpaste. In addition, this whitens your teeth, freshens your breath, neutralizes pathogens, helps to improve your gum line, and with good oral hygiene, you can reduce cardiovascular disease and valvular disease. It's not the only way you get cardiovascular disease or valvular disease, but poor oral hygiene can cause problems with your heart valves and cardiovascular system. So please improve your health, improve your oral hygiene, and use really high quality toothpaste. All right, this is a very high quality toothpaste. It has no fluoride in it. Why? Because fluoride makes you stupid. So please go to my store and get this high quality toothpaste. And lastly, structural nanosilver gels, dual purpose product, helps to heal wounds quicker. In addition, you can use it as a skincare product. Put it on your skin, maybe right before you go to bed, and then exfoliate in the morning, and you'll notice your skin is clearer and tighter, all right, especially on your face. In addition, it'll neutralize pathogens. So we're in the cold season, and put it on your hands, stays active for 5 hours. 5+ hours, put it around your mouth, around your nose, around your eyes, around your ears. You can lightly coat your nostrils with this. You can't do that with Perel. Why? Perel evaporates because it's alcohol-based, and Perel cracks your skin. Structural nanosilver gel heals your skin. All right? This is a very high-quality product, neutralizes pathogens. You will need this during the cold season. Get a couple tubes of this. You will need it. And lozenges. Cold season in the United States. I am sure that you know someone that's sick. Positive about it. So please go to my store and get the lozenges. The moment you have that irritation in your throat, make sure that you take these lozenges or drops. This one's in a 21 count. It's Manuka honey. Get a couple bags of the lozenges or a couple bags of the drops. I have it in honey and lemon in a 100 count. Cherry drops in a 100 count. And blueberry in a 100 count. Get a couple bags for your household. Someone in your family may be sick. Someone at work may be sick. You might be sick. You know what? We're in the cold season. Mitigate it by taking the drops right away. The moment you have that irritation in your throat, take the drops or the lozenges. The structural nanosilver will neutralize the pathogen, and in addition, it will help to maintain that mucosal barrier. That's really important because if you have a poor mucosal barrier, what will happen is that you are increasing the chances of getting an infection. So please go to my store and make sure you get this structural nanosilver drops or lozenges. So let's, well, they're on break right now. So let's see. Social Security Administration announces a 2.5% cost of living adjustment, I think they said. Okay, so here, let's go to Al Jazeera. See, I was going to do Bloomberg first, but let's do Al Jazeera because they're on. Bloomberg's on break here. All right, the VIX right now is at 21, and the futures market for the S&P 500 is at 5,820. So we're above my target for the year now. I still have a 5,800 target for S&P 500 by year end, and we're increasing the probability of hitting 6,000. All right, so and if people have been following me for months about, I've been saying this, it's all playing out. Let's see here. Are they back yet? Okay, let's go to Bloomberg there. They're playing here.
From waning demand, BMW and Mercedes sales plunge in China as Stellantis eyes a management shakeup.
Plus, airline stocks slide in pre-market trading after Delta delivers a disappointing outlook. All of that and more coming up. Let's take a look at markets. 30 minutes into those bells ring, it doesn't look too pretty. Of course, if you take a look at the main indexes, the S&P 500 down about 0.4%. The NASDAQ 100 also off by about 0.5%. Of course, inflation coming in a bit hotter. Claims were higher than expected, but of course, a lot of that can be chalked up to what's going on with those hurricanes. As such, you can see the bond market trying to figure out what's due. The 10-year yield currently camped out at around 407.
All right. Nonetheless, we did hit a 44th record high on the S&P yesterday. That has valuations soaring. You can see investors are paying 22 times next year's expected earnings, higher than any point since the beginning of the pandemic.
But now we are back to reality, are we not? So let's look at some stocks to watch under the surface as well. We're taking a look at Delta shares falling after the airline reported profit and sales forecasts that missed Wall Street estimates, ultimately suggesting a slow recovery from summer travel challenges. Domino's also reported earnings, trimming its 2024 projections for sales growth. Slower consumer spending hit the restaurant industry here, and you're seeing it in Domino's. We're also watching Tesla as investors eagerly await the first look at the company's fully self-driving vehicle later today. Matt, you will be out of a driving job.
Yeah, I'm going to continue to operate the vehicle myself, but I will focus in on that news. Really right now, though, it's inflation and claims that are front and center, Katie. We saw inflation rise twice as quickly as we expected it to month over month. Yeah. And the year over year level, it's the highest acceleration that we've seen in a year and a half for inflation. Yeah. So maybe
this is why the Federal Reserve should not have raised rates, should not have lowered rates.
Of course, claims it's noisy because of the hurricane, but still, that was the biggest jump in initial jobless claims in 3 years. And we know that the Fed has to make policy with the economy that they have. And I mean, you take a look at the labor market, obviously feeling the pain right now, but you also have inflation hotter than expected. Yes, let me just quickly also pull up the 2-year yield.
Let me just dive into this a little bit before they continue. Like I said, the Federal Reserve screwed up. They lowered rates. Why did they screw up? Because inflation is above target and unemployment is below natural rate. All right. And until you're above 5% for unemployment and until you're below 2% for inflation, you should not cut unless there is a huge crisis for whatever reason, war, banking crisis, whatever it is. All right. So the Federal Reserve screwed up. And what they're trying to do is try to fine-tune a soft landing that they'll never be able to do. And so now the data is saying unemployment rate is going up a little bit, but it's still below the natural unemployment rate. And inflation is up. So by them lowering rates, they've juiced up the economy, so your goods and services are going to be more expensive. Thank you, Federal Reserve, for fucking up again.
Hence, the first headline drove yields higher because of that inflation print. Then you saw those jobless claims, and there might be a lot of noise in there, but take a look at it. You just saw the bond market really react to that so quickly there. And we were back to a story where clearly the chart shows you that traders don't know which direction to head.
Well, traders, well, no, I feel like you want to own that bet
Jobs
now.
what?
What do you think the Fed is going to cut in November? Let's get over to Mike McKee to ask him to interpret this for us. He's our chief international economic policy correspondent.
He's pretty good.
So, Mike, 258,000 jobless claims. This is a number I haven't seen in quite a long time. And inflation up to 3.3%. That's a number we haven't seen in a year and a half.
Yeah, the inflation is a little bit harder to figure out. The jobless claims, as you say, 258,000, but that's likely due to the hurricane and the people in Georgia, North Carolina, and Florida who were filing unemployment claims. We saw the unadjusted number go up by 53,000. So a significant number of people all at once filing claims. And when you look at the week prior, which is where the data comes from in terms of jobless claims, the states that had the fewest, the biggest drops in claims were Georgia, Florida, and North Carolina, and those are states where all those offices would have been closed. Now, the inflation numbers are interesting because what was going down went up, what was going up went down. Other than energy and gasoline, which dropped a lot, we saw new cars, used cars go up in price. Food, which had been falling or flat for 7 months, goes up by 4/10. Food at home. So the grocery store is a problem. And you look here, this is the orange there is services, and the blue at the bottom is what I want you to notice there. It went above zero. Goods prices through food go up, and so that is really what pushed it up. Service prices, as you can see, have always been sort of higher, although shelter costs only up 3/10, which we hadn't seen in a very long time. And you wonder about the market and what they're doing. You look at what swaps are showing right now for the November meeting, 85 basis points. In other words, less than one cut for November. Now, that's a residue and hangover from last Friday, but obviously maybe the CPI numbers feed into that fear, and people aren't sure that the Fed is going to cut. We got a lot of Fed speak over today, tomorrow, and next week, so watch that.
We certainly do, and of course we had the Fed minutes yesterday. I do want to wrap that into the claims reading that we got, because we know it's very noisy, of course, with the hurricane, but going back to the Fed minutes, one of the passages in there was that many participants observed that the evaluation of labor market developments had been challenging, increased immigration, revisions to reported payroll data, possible changes in the underlying growth rate. Basically, you add it all together, it sounds like, it's getting harder and harder to get a feel for the labor market, even at the policy-making level. So, I have to ask, how much concern are you hearing about the quality of the labor market data that we have?
That question has been raised directly with some Fed officials that I've spoken with, and they basically say,
We notice all these guys are wearing
that we're not really worried
regimental
about.
ties.
We're just looking at
lately.
the non-farm payrolls. We're looking at JOLTS. We're looking at jobless claims, although this will kind of get tossed out. They're looking at all of the regional PMIs, the national PMIs, ISM numbers, and they're putting together a kind of a overall look at it. Plus, they're always talking to CEOs and leaders. I was talking with some folks from ISM yesterday, and even though labor's been down in the manufacturing level, they say the companies aren't worried about it. They're just basically not hiring at this point, but they're not letting people go. They're still anticipating that the economy will rebound.
You saw that in the Fed minutes as well. Several participants emphasizing disaggregated data and also the checks that they do with their business contacts. Mike McKee, great to talk with you. Of course, that is Bloomberg's Mike McKee. And let's keep the conversation going now with Victoria Fernandez. She is Chief Market Strategist over at Crossmark Global Investments. And so you take a look at the reaction to the data that we got so far this morning. Of course, we had claims higher than expected, inflation hotter than expected. So you add it all together, the reaction has been to sell stocks and buy the front end. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think it is kind of a warring of these two different elements. You had the Fed say, look, inflation is under control, so we're now going to focus on the labor market. And what we saw today is, well, perhaps that's not quite true. And we've been talking about that for months with our clients going, look, we still think you can see used car prices go up because they've been coming down. I mean, I know my car insurance continues to go up and my homeowner's insurance goes up. We saw food and apparel go up. So the goods component moved higher, and I think that's going to be concerning for the Fed. At the same time, you're looking at a labor market where perhaps it's not as strong as the payroll report last week led us to believe. I know we have hurricane numbers that are wrapped into this, but there's other elements that y'all were just talking about with Mike that say, hey, wait a minute, things maybe aren't so good. Temporary hiring is down. Labor differential is getting worse and worse. Cyclical employment is coming down. So I think that tells you the Fed has a very tough choice here. I would lean towards them either taking a pause in November if we continue to see data like we saw today, or only a 25 basis point cut. The probabilities of nothing happening at the November meeting were already up to 25% yesterday. We'll see where that ends up today, but it does give you a little room in the market to maybe pick up some extra yield in that short end of the bond market.
Victoria, how much of a risk is there that we're going to be faced with a situation where the Fed has to both deal with sticky inflation as well as a weakening labor market? How does that play out? And do you think that that's a real risk moving forward?
Sonali, I think it is a risk. You know, look, we've been talking with our clients saying we don't want to stand in the way of the momentum that we've seen in the equity market. The trend is higher. You don't want to be on the opposite side of that,
It's
but
going
you've
higher.
got to be guarded because there are these risk elements that I think the Fed is going to start
Equities are going higher, period. End of story.
to and not live up to the expectations the market priced in. It's part of the reason that we saw yields move higher the way they did. Typically, yields move higher after a first cut, so that's par for the course, but we've had a 50 basis point move in the 10-year Treasury. We've had almost an equivalent move in the 2-year. So that's telling us that there's still some concern there. We're not sure the Fed has everything under control the way that they want to, and that is a risk. The last thing the Fed wants to do is stoke those flames of inflation, have that move higher as we head into the end of the year, and have to actually raise rates again. I don't think there's, that's going to happen at the November or the December meeting if things continue the way they are, but it is a risk that's out there
That is
along
so
with
dumb.
the risk of a weakened.
If the Federal Reserve raises rates now, they're going to lose total credibility. Total credibility. They're not going to raise rates. They may hold rates, but they're sure as hell ain't going to raise rates. They should have held rates for 2 quarters and waiting for unemployment to go up above 5% for 2 quarters and for inflation to be below 2% for 2 quarters. So they move too quickly. But they're not going to raise rates. There's no way they're going to blow up their credibility to the market. The market's just going to keep on going up because they juiced it. Don't be stupid.
Labor market hurting the consumer.
Well, and why continue to cut? I mean, we talk about a weakening labor market because of this week's data, right? But the last jobs number was, a blowout, and we're running at 3%. We hit yet another record high on the S&P 500 yesterday. Spreads are at tights. I mean, this economy looks pretty darn strong.
Yeah,
and
right, exactly.
Investors are paying 22 times next year's earnings. Like, that's sky
Right.
high.
If the market is too hot, you don't cut rates. You actually either stay at the rate, or you increase rates. You don't lower them. They screwed up. And the reason why they did it was political gain for the Democratic Party because they wanted to juice up the market.
Is that it is priced for perfection at 22 times. And we have obviously earnings really kicking off tomorrow with the banks. If earnings don't live up to the expectations that the market has, you can see that coming back pretty quickly, those valuations. Again, it's a reason we're staying guarded in this market. And yes, the economy is doing okay right now, but there are some yellow flags waving. I don't want to necessarily say red flags, but there are some yellow flags. And I think it's why the Fed does need to be cautious. You say, why cut it all? I think that should be part of their discussion. We saw in the minutes from the last meeting, not everyone was
She's just an idiot. She's just an idiot. The thing is, These yellow flags have been around for almost 2 years. And the only thing that has happened is the equities have been going up.
On board with the 50 basis point cut. I think you're going to see even more of that coming. There is this bifurcation going on in the market, and you see it on consumer spending. You see it on earnings. You see it on employment. You see it in production, in CapEx. Different parts of the market are doing okay, whereas other parts of the market are really suffering. I think that means the Fed needs to really take its time.
And just quickly, Victoria, put this into a portfolio. You mentioned that, you have some caution at this stage. Where does that lead you when you take a look, of course, at the sector level, at the industry level, about where you want to be right now?
Right. So
where you really want to be, what she's going to say is where you really want to be is a little bit in bonds and a little bit in stocks, most likely large cap. That's probably what she's going to say. I don't know because this is live. But the thing is that what's going to happen is that in the broad market, S&P 500 index, it's going to go up. It's going to go up in the short term. By year end, you have a much higher probability of hitting 6,000 than being at, 5,400. Assuming that there's not nuclear war or some, crazy, unforeseen thing that happens in the Middle East. But with everything that's playing out the way it is, most likely the S&P 500 is going to be closing at anywhere from 5,800 to 6,000 by year end.
In the market, like I said, you want to take advantage of the momentum that we're seeing there, but look at some of the new areas that have actually taken some leadership. Some of your industrials, financials are holding in
Large
because
cap.
you see a yield curve that is steepening again. I think you can actually look at some of the staples or healthcare names, more of those defensive names that have come back over the last week, pick up a little bit there, but I would add some fixed income allocation and some dividend income oriented allocations to your portfolio to buffer.
Now think about that. Now think about that for a second. The average person is 100% invested in the market now. All right. Now they may be putting in, some sort of money flow into their 401k. But you can't be that targeted in your 401k. Now, if you have an IRA, you can be a little bit more targeted. But in your 401k, most of that is mutual funds. So you can't be that targeted. Well, what she's saying. It'd be a little bit more difficult in the 401k. It's possible in an IRA, to pick individual stocks and, change your distribution, your monthly distribution into that IRA. But the average person is already invested 100% in the market. That's part of the reason why it's going up. All right. So you're not be able to. So she's really not talking to the average investor, the average quote retail investor. She's really talking to the institutional investor that's getting money flows from individuals, and they're managing their money, and they have built up a portfolio that's targeted. Trust me. All right. You want to just trust me on this. All right. The broad market is going to go up. Now, if you start trying to pick individual stocks, you're going to have idiosyncratic risk for those individual stocks. Now, it could be to your benefit, but it could also harm you. And that's the reason why individual investing of stocks is not a good idea in the long run. Because of the idiosyncratic risk.
Income. All right, so income through bonds and through dividends. Crossmarks, Victoria Fernandez, always great to speak with you. Appreciate it.
Bonds and dividends. Now, where do you get that dividend? From large cap. See, I didn't even need to know what she was going to say, and I told you how it was going to play out. It's just stupid. These people are just dumb. They're dumb.
These futures, of course, less than 20 minutes until the bells ring, and we have a sea of red. You take a look at the S&P 500, the NASDAQ 100, both feeling the pinch, but in a big way, it's the small caps leading the decline. The Russell 2000 currently off by about 1%. Meanwhile, let's take a look under the hood right now.
Small caps are leading the decline. See? See? I mean, I'll tell you, there's an awful lot of people that are on large channels or large media platforms, and they're stupid.
I'll do a little separate from the overall pressure that we have on stocks right now, Katie. We do have some stocks here under pressure for idiosyncratic reasons, starting off with the shares of PayPal down nearly 3%. This has Bernstein cuts shares to a market perform from
See what I mean?
saying
This
that
is
the company
what I'm saying.
button that it
This is what I'm saying.
is more expensive.
This is what I'm saying. Individual investing in stocks has idiosyncratic risk, and you're not going to be able to play that whole diversification of a broad index. That's why I'm a macro trader, because this horseshit will destroy you.
Than its competitors. So there could be competitive pressures in addition to interest rate concerns. We also have the shares of Pfizer lower. Two executives, former executives, have actually 10 times genomics down 28%. And this as they put up a disappointing quarter, missing both earnings and revenue estimates. There is a 7% bear short interest in stock on the year, already down 63%. Shanali, it seems as though a lot of these DNA testing companies, they had a limited population of people who wanted to participate, and now Tupper moves ahead. And then here's Pfizer, down more than 1%, two former executives.
And that's part of the reason why Virginia Atlantic guy, whatever his name, from the UK, the billionaire that looks like Mick Jagger with blonde hair. I forgot the hell of his name. He was the one that did made his money in the music industry, selling music or something too. Interesting guy, but he's losing his shirt because of 23andMe, because he owns it, and they thought they were going to be able to monetize. So that whole sequencing genre of companies, no way.
That they don't want to be a part of Starboard Value's turnaround efforts. Investors responding negatively, Shanali, to that news.
Abigail, thank you so much for keeping an eye on all of it for us. Now coming up, we're going to talk about Hurricane Milton, moving off Florida's coast after cutting a path of destruction. We're going to bring you the latest. This is Bloomberg.
All right, I want to go to El Desir here for a second.
Provide a massive amount of humanitarian aid and, of course, finance for the Palestinian Authority. But at the political level, it remains divided and probably will remain divided for quite some time to come. But that doesn't mean to say that efforts to follow through on the common position that the EU does have, the two-state solution, doesn't mean to say those efforts should not continue and be enforced.
In January, the world's top court found that Israel was plausibly perpetrating genocide in Gaza. The International Court of Justice, the ICJ, issued several provisional measures compelling Israel to abide by the Genocide Convention and uphold international humanitarian law. With the war entering its second year, Israel is continuing to defy international court rulings. Michael Apple reports.
3 months into the war in Gaza, South Africa leveled the gravest of accusations against Israel. It's committing genocide.
This killing is nothing short of destruction of Palestinian life. It is inflicted deliberately. No one is spared, not even newborn babies.
At the time the case opened at the International Court of Justice, or ICJ, in The Hague at the end of last year, the death toll in Gaza stood at over 21,000 Palestinians, a third of...
I'm not really sure that the international community should have so much power. I don't know. In a road to sovereignty of nations. And by the way, I don't believe the United States are part of the IJC. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the probiotics. I have two different types of probiotics. I have the VeggieCap form, and I also have it in a powder form. I normally take the powdered form. The powdered one, you have a little scooper and you just mix it with your food. I mix it with hummus actually each afternoon, and just do it every day. Or you can take the veggie caps. It's up to you. All right, they're both very high quality. And the reason why you want to take a probiotic is that you want to bring down that gut inflammation, because chronic gut inflammation can cause disruption with the mucosal lining barrier. And when that's disturbed, you can get leaky gut, you can get infections, and you can actually have DNA damage with chronic infection or chronic inflammation. So you want to bring down that inflammatory response. In addition, good probiotics are going to allow you to digest your food better. You're going to have better metabolism and better communication between your gut and your liver and your gut and your brain. A lot of people don't realize that your mental acuity and your mood are affected by your gut biome because of this communication between your gut and your brain. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get these very high quality probiotics, all right, either in the powdered form or the veggie cap form. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. In addition, I have a multivitamin. This multivitamin is easy to digest, and multivitamins are really important because they're cofactors for enzymes that are in your cell, for your cells, that if you don't have the right concentration of cofactors, those enzymes aren't going to perform as well, so your cellular metabolism isn't going to be as good, and the cellular processes won't be as good. They'll be subpar. So you want to take a multivitamin as part of your daily protocol, all right? Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get this multivitamin. It's a great start to moving forward with your health. I partnered up with Rainbow Herbals, and we've developed these deodorant bars that are dual purpose. They're used for deodorant as a deodorant. You use it every day. It's for males and females, but it also will help to detoxify your body. Why? It's made from natural ingredients from the Himalayas, all essential oils that are made, and those ingredients are from the highlands of the Himalayas, right? So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get these deodorant bars. It's for males and females. Get a couple bars for your household. Very high quality, and it's dual purpose. I believe in providing dual purpose products the best that I can. So please go to the store and either get the citrus version or the peppermint, lavender, and tea tree. All right, what's going on? All right, I want to play Bloomberg here.
Yeah, and our growth rate 6.3%, as I said, that's the fastest pretty much in ASEAN. And I think we're in the right place because there's really a lot of people who are looking at ASEAN as their big growth area. Hong Kong certainly is.
Yep. So what's a prototypical type of investment that you guys would be
See, this is important because as the hot money, as the central banks lower their rates from developed regions like the ECB or the BOE or even the Fed, as they start pumping money, it's going to be hot and it's going to go to equities and it's going to go overseas to Asia.
We're looking at just 4 hours from Manila. You have a province called Mindoro, beautiful beaches.
They're setting it up. They're setting it up for the investors to do this.
Okay. Now they also happen to have 2 out of 5 of the wind corridors for the country, and so there's money that wants to go into renewables, but there's no grid. Okay, so if you don't have a grid, what's the point of it?
Do you need outside investment from the IMF and others to
make
your work, how and all that works out?
We have enough. I mean, we're investing. We welcome co-investments, but we're looking at it, and we're hoping as we go along, we develop partnerships. We've been talking to several pension funds, Western pension fund, North American, and they're all very interested to start doing something with us.
One final question: you got a sovereign wealth fund.
You know why they're doing the pension funds?
6% growth thing. What do you do?
Because the outlays are getting more because more people are retiring. And they're going to have a shortfall, so they have to try to juice up their portfolio, all right? And they're going to try to be chasing yield overseas. And that's going to be a catastrophe. Short term, it'll be all right, but in long term, it'll be a catastrophe. Mark my words on that.
Manny Pacquiao help you with your sovereign wealth fund. I know he's in politics, but can you get Pacquiao over to do some investment?
Well, he's running for Senate on the administration slate, so hopefully we can get him to come along when we go on a road show, so that at least people want to see him.
The market's going to open up.
Council of Foreign Relations Ambassador and Admiral Stavridis with us yesterday. This is really front and center. Paul, I did not realize the growth rate there of the Philippines on a relative basis.
Exactly right.
Andrew Gunn, thank you so much for the Sovereign Wealth Fund of the Philippines this morning here. Maharlika?
Maharlika.
You should see my Filipino language at home.
That's not good.
It's just down in flames.
Thank you so much.
Andrew, thank you so much.
I think the thing to emphasize about the Philippines is since we've been kind of ignored for a long time, we're very humble. And we're anxious for people to come in and our shingles up, and we hope people will consider us.
We did not notice that at the King household. Andrew, I greatly appreciate it this morning here. Futures down 18 right now. They're 21.09. Please stay with us.
So they're on time delay.
In the Pacific Rim in your evening. We're out on YouTube. Subscribe to Bloomberg Podcasts across the nation on your commute. Bloomberg Radio. From New York City and Bloomberg 1130, stay with us nationwide.
All right, so the market's at 5,774. All right, let's jump to Al Jazeera here. What's Al Jazeera having to say?
Back to South Africa's own struggle. The main people who supported the liberation.
Let's go. Okay, come on.
Stock currently up about 0.5%.
You also have Domino's, Katie, taking a little bit of a lift pre-market in the market open. Sorry, up more than 1%. Interesting. That's even as Domino's expects annual global sales growth below its long-term target of 7% or more. It also cut its outlook for net store openings through the end of the year. Pizza-flation, Matt. Not a good joke? Okay.
I like it. You know what I was thinking? Back in the day, a couple of guys paid 10,000 Bitcoin for 2 pizzas, which would be worth about $60 billion.
That's the worst trade ever? I don't know.
Yeah, it has to be up there with the worst trades ever. All right, today, Tesla will unveil its fully self-driving vehicle. Shares are up about 70% since April when Musk pivoted the company to a focus on AI. More on that in a moment, but we continue to see record after record close for the S&P 500 this year, 44 to be exact. Let's take a closer look with Bloomberg's Abigail Dulo. Abby?
Yeah, we may have losses on the day, but we do have big gains on the year. And in fact, sector-wise for the S&P 500 coming into today, 44 record highs, as Katie was talking about. Lots of stocks trading higher, including Bitchute and NVIDIA. But from a sector perspective, you can see technology up 32%, communications up about 28%, and then utilities up 24%. And what makes this really interesting is the fact that, of course, utilities, because of the AI craze, getting this big boost. On bottom, real estate, but still up a healthy 8%, energy up 10.1%. So again, a very strong year. Now, relative to some of those big movers on the year, if we take a look at what's happening here, Vistra, that is the top stock, up 222%.
Before we went on the air, they're going to be traveling pretty extensively over the coming weeks here. I suspect internationally, they're going to be asking you about your thoughts on the U.S. election coming up. How would you frame a response to some of your international clients?
Well, I think that the major probable risk to the U.S. economy comes from the elections. And the economic policies of a new Trump administration will be very different than those of the Harris administration. If you take at face value what Trump says, he says, I'm going to impose tariffs on all imports in the U.S. of 10 to up to 20%, up to 60% on those from China. He wants to devalue the dollar because he thinks it's too strong and has led to deindustrialization. He wants a more dovish Fed. We'll have a chance to change some of the leadership of the Fed. And the Center for Responsible Budgets the other day said that his fiscal policy would increase the deficits and the debt by $7.5 trillion over the next decade. That's well above what the Harris will have it, but unquote only 3.5. And it will have a restriction to migrations, severe draconian restriction to migration. Not it's going to deport millions of people, but even not letting them in implies a significant reduction in the labor supply. So all these things together, all these policies, trade, currency, migration, monetary, fiscal policy, in my view, imply higher inflation, lower economic growth.
So wait, so you have people in New York that are basically saying we have to have illegal immigration so we can have a good economy. I mean, this is why people need to push back on this. People need to say, you know what? Illegal immigration is illegal. Period.
It's deflationary because whether it's immigration, whether it's the currency, whether it's trade, whether it's monetary fiscal policy, they are increasing inflation and they would reduce economic growth. So that
and what is that economic growth? And what is that economic growth, Professor? Because when you have illegal immigration, you know, they're sucking up services, federal services, state services. So are they really producing a productive economy? I'm not really sure about that.
And potentially even de-dollarization, gradual, but it will increase essentially.
Can you model, well, this is your wheelhouse. When you were with President Clinton, can you model a weak dollar?
Can I model it in which
Do you predict a weak dollar?
It depends. You know, if we have a very large fiscal deficits and if we have very large current account deficit, these twin deficits are going to continue. In spite of the strength of the private sector, I think at some point the bond market vigilante is going to wake up. And in the last few years, in spite of these twin deficits, the dollar was strengthening because we had tight monetary policy. And therefore, the capital account was essentially compensating for a very large current account deficit. But if that large current account deficit remains, at the same time, interest rate differential are implying that the capital inflow in the U.S. are going to be less, let alone the fact that we're weaponizing the dollar and some country may be gradually de-dollarizing, that would imply over time a weaker dollar. Over time, I'm not talking about the crash of the U.S. dollar, but the counter-argument is that there is so much innovation in the U.S. that the inflows of capital are not going to be into fixed income treasuries, but rather in equities. That has sustained, of course, the dollar for the last few years. If that continues, then that might be partially supportive of the dollar, leading to less of a weakening.
Professor, most of us grew up with globalization as a theme, as something we learned and experienced. But that seems to have reversed itself a little bit over the last 4, 5, 6 years. A, do you agree with that? And B, will that continue?
It has to
yes,
continue
I would
because
say that
we're losing our
both the
manufacturing.
trends of geopolitical fragmentation are leading to some degree of, call it either deglobalization or decoupling or de-risking or reshoring and friendshoring or changing in the global supply chains from just in time to just in case, from China to China +1 or +2, from emphasizing in investment economic security rather than economic efficiency. So the question is not whether the direction is one towards fragmentation is going to continue given geopolitics, given AI, given other pressures that are on labor income. The question is not whether, but only how much and how fast.
Nora Rubini with us here, folks. The Dow negative 92, the VIX 21.23. A little bit of weight to the tape this morning. And Nora, with all that said, we're in a bull market. Tomorrow, JP Morgan earnings. For the last 10 years, annual return on JP Morgan is 12, 13, 14% per year. How do you explain the lift in asset valuations in America?
Well, that's
where the only action is.
One, we achieved a soft landing, and we achieved it not because of what the Fed did, but because we got lucky. Those three negative aggregate supply shocks of COVID reversed themselves.
You think the Fed got lucky?
They got lucky because in any other situation, the Fed going from 0 in QE to 5.5 in QT would have led not only to lower inflation, but also to significantly lower growth and even a recession. Now, we had the lower inflation, but we did not have the recession. Why? My explanation is the three negative aggregate supply shocks of COVID, the impact of COVID on supply of goods and services and supply chains and labor went away. The impact of the shock of Russia, Ukraine on commodity prices went away, and China phased out the zero COVID policy. On top of those three, we got other things that happened. One was immigration, 2.5 million people entering the U.S. for the last 4 years, documented or undocumented. That kept a little wage growth, increased growth. We had the AI revolution that also has led significant increase in private capex. So all those factors explain why we said stronger growth and inflation went lower. It was not really the Fed. It was just we got lucky and we got immigration and we got the AI revolution.
Geopolitical risk that's front and center
hasn't even started
really
yet.
over the last several years, probably more so than has been in a while. Yet markets seem to churn higher. How do you factor, whether it's coming out of Ukraine or the Middle East, how do you factor that in?
Well, my explanation is that for the time being, markets have correctly estimated that all these conflicts are regional rather than global. After all, Russia and Ukraine is very ugly. It has damaged.
It's really simple. People are working and they're investing for their retirement. The ones that have disposable money, all right? Where are you going to put it? Are you going to put it into China? Are you going to put it in South America? Are you going to put it in bonds? Of course you're going to put it into equities.
In the short run, or having global consequences. So the markets are correctly saying these things are terrible for specific countries and regions, but they don't have a global impact. Of all of them, I would say the biggest risk today is that if Israel were to go and strike Iran, and there's a consensus within Israel, not just on the right, Netanyahu, but even people that are in opposition, like Benny Gantz has said, we have to get rid of this regime in Iran. Then if Israel were to go to try to achieve regime change in Iran, you could have really a conflagration of the Gulf. You could have essentially the production and export of oil from the Gulf being blocked for several months. Right. You could have a shock like 1970 Yom Kippur or 1979 Islamic Iranian Revolution. I think that's the biggest risk. And by the way, if Trump gets elected, the chance is going to give a green light to Netanyahu to go and say, bomb the hell out of Iran, get rid of the regime, will be higher than under Harris administration.
Where does Turkey fit in this? Your father moved rugs in Turkey years ago. Nor will be on the next airline. What do you expect to see there?
Well, the economy is still quite fragile. The good news that he put in place as finance minister, Mehmet Şimşek, was actually very mainstream and orthodox. Yeah, it's very good, and therefore inflation is gradually falling, but still too high. But they're going at least in the direction that are less heterodox economic policy and gradually more orthodox one. So I would say that actually Turkey is a country that, based on the overall fundamentals, strong manufacturing sector, innovation, good financial sector, could do well.
Okay, for Atlas America, we've heard this, Nouriel. Are you telling me, I got 30 seconds, are you telling me you're long Turkish lira? Is that going to be your first trade here?
No, I'm not long Turkish lira because the inflation rate is still too high and the amount of monetary, fiscal, and credit tightening is not yet sufficient. But I'm saying
exactly
right. To what
foreign countries don't have the same economic stability, even though they may are more volatile, and they may in some countries may have actually a higher growth rate, but they're unstable. The economy isn't as robust as the United States. So where's the money really going to go? And that's why I said, you try to chase yield over to the Philippines, over into Southeast Asia with your pension from America, you're going to be able to get a little bit of a yield gain in relative terms for a few years, but it's going to crash. because money always comes back. It always gets repatriated when there's a problem. What happens when there's a war in Asia, which could probably happen in 2025? Do you really think that you're going to be able to chase yield in the Philippines? Probably not. Probably not.
Capital to grow.
Yeah,
That's what
I totally agree. That came up today with an earlier conversation. I totally agree. Everybody in the media is focused on bank dynamics, and what it's really about is customer dynamics as well. Dow negative 121 to VIX 21.23. From New York City on YouTube, Bloomberg surveillance.
What's going on with Al Jazeera?
The part of man is ignored and passive.
The artillery shelling is dangerous, but we stayed and remained patient. The first time, at the start of the conflict, it killed 2 people, and they also hit our health centers. But this is the
For
place.
some reason, I'm not getting, good news out of Al Jazeera for whatever reason. All right, let's see what's going on.
Firm says that the sportswear giant is moving in the right direction with the return of company veterans, including Elliott Hill as CEO. He starts on Monday. Next up, CFRA says that Lululemon no longer a buy, downgrading the company to a hold. Analysts over there say that shares are due for consolidation. And finally, we have JP Morgan raising AIG to a buy. The analyst says that the bullish view on the stock reflects its outsized EPS growth and attractive valuation, Matt.
All right, interesting stuff there. I want to get to cars. The board at Stellantis is meeting to discuss the future of CEO Carlos Tavares this week. It comes as Tavares is planning, reportedly, a sweeping management shakeup in response to the company's disastrous profit warning. This according to a source. Let's discuss with Bloomberg's auto czar, Craig Trudell, who sits in London. And Craig, I was looking at the shares of Stellantis. They had been winning in terms of, all of the incumbent automakers this year, and now they are the biggest loser, dropping 55% peak to trough. What can Tavares do?
Yeah, this has really been a stunning few months for this company because I think, up to even, early this year, it was really, an automaker that was firing, right? And the reputation of Tavares was as, a real sort of, executor, the ability to combine these two companies as he was able to, say, combine Opel when he was running PSA. So, he is, unfortunately, I think, for skeptics of this company, sort of resorted to more cutting in the face of, signs that maybe what this company actually needs is product, right? And so can he prove himself as a product guy more so than just, an operator? And I think that's the big sort of open question here.
And just to focus on the Palace intrigue for a little bit longer, what about Tavares' own future? Because, of course, you've reported that board members are also expected to discuss his future during the 2-day meeting. Of course, Bloomberg has reported that the chairman has started looking for a successor to Tavares, whose contract ends in early 2026. Is it possible that he goes before then?
I think it's unlikely that we would see him get the push, especially just at this juncture. I think, one of the things that makes Stellantis so fascinating is it's kind of like running the UN in the sense that, you have, very, very strong interests of the Italians, of the French, of the Americans. It's a company that is really complex, and this is going to be a really difficult succession search if you're John Elkann. And so, whether or not they would be able to quickly sort of pivot to a new leader when they have Tavares under contract for a good while longer now, I think it would be a real shock and would not necessarily inspire a whole lot of confidence in the company at a time when, morale is already quite low.
I wonder about General Motors. I was looking at the fact that that company's stock has dominated automakers. It's the only one of the big incumbents that hasn't fallen this year. It's doing very well. However, General Motors and Ford have the lowest valuations in terms of enterprise value to operating profit of any company on the S&P 500, and there are 503 companies on that index. Our own Joel Levington from Bloomberg Intelligence makes the argument that they have enough cash left over to buy 40% of their shares. Is it potential that we see a share buyback coming from GM?
Well, I think that's actually part of what's driven such a strong year for Mary Barra is the fact that, around this time last year, this was a company that was really struggling with its investments in electric vehicles and robo-taxis. We had a really ugly incident with Cruise, their self-driving vehicle unit. And she really made a sort of, huge decision.
No one wants to buy these SUVs, all electric vehicles. Maybe a hybrid, maybe. But these all EV vehicles, no one wants to buy. Why? Because where are you going to charge it? It takes too long to charge. The damn thing blows up. No one wants them.
Late in 2023 to put off some of the electric vehicle projects that they had, both vehicles themselves and batteries that went into them. She's really made some dramatic moves in bringing in new leadership of the battery business, and she's taken quite a bit of money off the table for Cruise to go through and really sort of honed in on what this company does best, which is make big pickups and SUVs that they make a lot of money off of. And in the meantime, they were going to buy back shares and really do a significant amount of returning to shareholders. And that really kind of touched off a bit of a trend in the industry where others had to follow suit.
I suspect that if Trump wins, that the American automakers are going to rally.
Analysis is spot on that there may be more to buy in the near future.
All right, Craig, unfortunately, we got to leave it there. Really appreciate your reporting. That is Bloomberg car czar, Craig Trudell. Now, coming up, FTC Chair Lena Khan says that there's a lot more work left to do, even as major Democratic donors call for her ouster. That's next in our Wall Street Beat. This is Bloomberg.
All right, I want to hear this. The endowment returns for the Ivy League. That is their comp group. The Ivy League. What's going on in Harvard and they're down? I thought they were like the bomb.
No, they
so
were
run by a bunch of
20 years
idiots.
ago. And then they switched things around. There were a lot of complaints that they paid their managers way too much for extraordinary returns. And then they switched the whole system around. In 1984, Jack Meyer left. I'm sorry, 2005.
Okay.
Jack Meyer left.
Did he leave or was he thrown out?
Well, he wasn't thrown out, but there was a lot of pressure because, again,
Because why?
in 1 year they paid a manager $35 million.
To manage $18 trillion.
$billion. And they had extraordinary returns. People found that on CB.
All this is about is they thought they were
meddling,
making too much money.
Meddling with investment strategy. They changed it up, and then they had a revolving door of managers, including
Making less money.
making considerably less money. Now, Jack Meyer wasn't paid $35 million. It was the managers, the
I
traders.
understand that. But what about in other endowments? Darden. I did a thing at Darden when they were number one or whatever, down at UVA or Texas.
They weren't
or
number
with
one.
others. Have other endowments taken the Harvard route? OMG, those CFAs are making too much money.
Well, Harvard was actually more like an internal hedge fund. They employed over 200 people, and they were individual traders. And at the same time, Harvard was killing it. Yale had a different model where they farmed out their money to outside managers. And the outside managers, were not employees of Yale, so they didn't show up on the tax return.
But the Yale model, as I understand it, was stocks, bonds, but a heavy dose of alternatives.
Mostly alternatives.
Mostly
they want to be illiquidity.
Is anybody outperforming the Standard & Poor's 500, the Mag 7? I'm serious.
Well, I mean, the S&P returned 23% in this time period.
Anybody getting that done?
I don't think so. We just had a story about Michigan State getting 15% returns
Not
and
bad.
40% equities.
When you look at Sharpe ratios and that, are they underperforming even after risk reduction?
Well, that's what Harvard talks about is they're worried about the risk.
Right.
And if you go back to 2008, what happened, you understand why they were selling their private equity out of secondaries. And they say their risk level was way too low for them.
Okay, talk to your agent, Reto. And we need you here daily in the 9 o'clock hour for some baseball.
Okay, well, I covered the Cleveland Indians in the playoffs in the late 90s in my first job in Akron, Ohio.
I really don't care about her covering baseball. Please go to my store. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video. And get the vitamin C and magnesium. This is important to improve your skin, but also your immune system. If you're not feeling well during the cold season, take a double dose. Make sure that you drink it with filtered water. Vitamin B complex, really important to boost up your energy levels. Why? B1 through B5 are vitamins that are needed for your mitochondria for the electron transport chain. That's how you get a lot of ATP. You need ATP as an energy source to have proper cellular function, proper tissue function. So to get proper cellular metabolism, make sure that you buy my vitamin B complex. It also helps with neurons. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Good night formula. A lot of people can't sleep at night on a regular basis. Please go to my store and get the good night formula. Take it every day. It has tryptophan and melatonin in it, so you can be well rested. So you're going to have the energy that you need when you wake up. You'll be able to consolidate memory because you need to be able to consolidate memory. You need deep sleep and the 3 cycles of REM sleep. In addition, your body detoxifies when you're well rested and when you're in deep sleep. If you're chronically sleep deprived, you're not detoxifying your body. And this is part of the reason why that sleep deprivation over many years can lead to early onset of dementia. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and make sure that you get the good night formula. Take it every day so you can get some sleep, be well rested, and you'll notice that your memory will be improving, your mental clarity will be improving, and you're detoxifying your body. You're getting healthier. So please go to my store and get the good night formula. Olive leaf extract, dual purpose product. I believe in providing dual purpose products to my audience. So olive leaf extract helps with the immune system and the cardiovascular system. How? By bringing down inflammation and also improving your lipid profile. It lowers LDL, increases HDL levels. That's good for you. All right, so please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the olive leaf extract. Take it every day to improve your cardiovascular health and your immune system. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. All right, what's going on?
Bloomberg.com. Max Chapkin there from Bloomberg Business Week. Now, coming up in the next hour, Nouriel Rubini joins us to talk about the economy and give us his thoughts as well.
So he's switching.
20 years.
Rubini's switching from the radio to
the activist treasury issuance theory. Then KBW's CEO joins us ahead of bank earnings.
All right, so since they are in commercial, let's take a look at what is playing, what's going on in Al Jazeera right now. See, sometimes Al Jazeera plays some stupid stuff that I don't like watching.
Our special coverage of Israel's war on Gaza 1 year on and rapid developments in the Middle East. From Gaza, where Israel is laying siege to the north of the Strip, to Lebanon, where Israel continues to strike positions in the south. Stay with us.
Now they're going to commercial too. Everyone going to commercial? All right. They're all on commercial. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and I might as well do a commercial too, right? get the ashwagandha root. Ashwagandha will help to bring down your cortisol levels and also your glucose levels. So that will bring down inflammation, right? And that will also help to boost up your immune system. And when you are chronically inflamed, you can be, creating cardiovascular problems because in the inner lining of your vessel with that high inflammation, just a little bit of a tear or a little bit of barrier disruption can lead to plaque buildup. All right. So you want to reduce that inflammation. You want to bring down the sugar levels. You want to bring down the cortisol levels. You want to bring down the free radical levels, bring down the LDL. And when you do that, you're improving your cardiovascular health. So ashwagandha will bring down those cortisol levels. That's important. When you're, again, if you're not sleeping well, you have high cortisol levels. When we have high cortisol levels, you're going to have more glucose in your bloodstream. And you're going to be in a more sympathetic state, and you're going to be on a higher stress level state. When that happens, your immune system goes down, your cardiovascular health goes down, or you're increasing the chances of arteriosclerosis. So it's important to control that. So this is the reason why ashwagandha is so important. Bring down those cortisol levels, bring down those glucose levels, bring down that inflammatory response, improve the health of your blood vessels. And by bringing down this pro-inflammatory response, by bringing that down, you're improving your immune system. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the ashwagandha root. Very important, very, very important. Turmeric. It's an antioxidant and it brings down inflammation. It is synergistic with ashwagandha, so it helps to boost up your immune system and improve your cardiovascular health. If you follow my protocol on how to reduce plaque and how to reduce the chances of building new plaque, a major component of it is turmeric and ashwagandha. But you also need C60 and some other supplements that I discussed earlier. All right, I want to hear what they have to say here.
Carolyn Bloomberg, a meteorologist on the latest developments with Hurricane Milton. We're going to follow up with that with Ken Johnson. He's the Walker Family Chair of Real Estate at the University of Mississippi. Get his thoughts on Hurricane Milton's impact on Florida housing. He's a chief economist at Stifel. She's also going to join us here to give us her thoughts on that inflation print we saw today. Vince Piazza, Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Equity Research Analyst. He covers all the energy stuff. He's going to give us his thoughts on the impact of Hurricane Milton on the oil and gas industry. I'm just going to give that to Alex, and she's just going to roll with it because it's energy, so we got that coming up. But first, let's go to John Tucker and get a little business fresh.
Hi, Paul and Alex. We are being brought to you by IBKR. Financial advisors switch to interactive brokers for lowest cost global trading and turnkey custody solutions. No ticket charges, no conflicts of your interest at ibkr.com/RIA. Major stock averages lower to little change. You have 6 of the 11 major industry groups in the S&P 500 down. The biggest drag right now coming from industrials and utilities, the best performer. The Dow Jones Industrial average 82 points lower. That's down 0.2%. S&P 500 is 13 points lower, down about 0.25%. And the Nasdaq Composite Index 52 points lower. That's down 0.3%. The underlying U.S. inflation data rising more than forecast in September. So that represents a pause in the recent progress toward moderating price pressures. The so-called core consumer price index that increased 0.3% from August and 3.3% from a year ago. Shelter and food combined, they accounted for over 75% of the overall monthly advance. Meantime, we also had data on the jobs market. Applications for U.S. unemployment benefits rising last week to the highest in over a year. And that's what the bond market seems to be focused on, a 2-year yield, which is more policy reactive. That's down about 5 basis points. That is under 4.397. The 10-year unchanged, 4.07%. And I check the markets for you all day long, right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker, and that's your Bloomberg Business Flash. Paul and Alex.
Guys,
hi, Alex.
Happy Thursday.
Yeah,
Happy
right.
Friday Eve.
It's a day. Alex Steele, Paul Sweeney, John Tucker, Bloomberg Intelligence Radio. I want to get you more on Hurricane Milton. Here's the latest. 3 million people still without power. Governor Ron DeSantis saying that the state has avoided, quote, the worst case scenario. Milton's now moving out into the Atlantic as a Category 1 hurricane. Flooding emergencies remain in effect. We do want to set you up with the latest. Here's Rob Carolyn, Bloomberg meteorologist, on the latest developments with Hurricane Milton. Hey, Rob, what is the state of play right now?
It's getting better, Alex. The storm is continuing to move away from the Florida coast. It's now over 100 miles east of Cape Canaveral. The winds along the Florida coast continue to drop off. We're now just seeing some gusts in northeastern Florida over 40 miles an hour. Certainly can see a reflection of that power being out to more than 3 million people in the data. There's so many locations around Florida now not reporting weather data because the power is out to the station, so they can't take it. The good news is the rain is almost over. We've just gotten out some scattered showers from Jacksonville along I-95 all the way down towards Melbourne. That's about it for precipitation. So from here on out, it should start getting much, much better across the entire peninsula.
Rob, I'm just recently looking at some amazing footage of Tropicana Field and how that entire roof was just really torn right off of that. Now, granted, that's a terrible place to watch a baseball game, but that's a real shame for there. Talk to us about Tampa and kind of how it was impacted or maybe missed a little bit.
Well, the good news is it did miss a bit. Our big concern yesterday was where exactly was the eye going to cross the coast. We mentioned that if it went somewhere between Bradenton and Port Charlotte, that would be a good scenario for Tampa in regards to storm surge. That's what happened. Lido Key is where the eye went overhead at about 8:30 last evening. So the winds blew the water out of Tampa Bay. The Tampa Bay area immediately was not affected by a huge storm surge, where the storm surge was bad. But south of Tampa, I've seen reports from Sarasota southward of about a 10-foot storm surge. In northeastern Florida this morning, we've had a storm surge of about 3 to 6 feet. The really good news was the storm certainly weakened just before it went inland, and that has resulted in winds not being quite as high, especially away from the coast. I've seen numerous reports of gusts over 100 miles an hour last night around Sarasota and other areas in the west central Florida as it went inland, but only about a 74-mile-an-hour gust last night at MCO. And as you look at the gusts along the east coast of Florida in the early morning hours of this morning, most places were gusting to about 75 or 80 miles an hour, and that's certainly below what it could have been had the storm been a little bit stronger as it went inland.
All right, Rob, thank you so much for your reporting over the last 7 days, really over the last couple of weeks here with all the hurricane activity. Rob Carolyn, Bloomberg meteorologist, giving us the latest on Hurricane Milton. Let's get back to the markets here. Got a little bit of red on the screen, not much here. Let's see where the action is under the hood. We do that with Norma Linda. She is the equities reporter for Bloomberg News, and she joins us here in our New York City studio. Norma, what are you looking at?
Well, keeping an eye and continuing that conversation about the hurricane, I'm still keeping an eye on insurance stocks. So we are seeing them rally this morning after we did see expectations of Hurricane Milton being super extreme, paring back a little bit. So we are seeing a rally more broadly across that sector. But I'm also keeping an eye on a lot of stocks that create generators. So they are currently lower, but if it does have the potential for multiple outages, that could be, it could be a tailwind for them. Let's hope that that's not the case, though.
Sure. Yeah, of course. It's also interesting, and like Mosaic is a top performing stock in the S&P, for example. Like, why? You know, they make fertilizer. There's a lot of fertilizer plants in production in Florida, so it could be a price thing there. So it's all those little intricate ways of looking at how to manage a storm in the equity market. No pun intended. Delta Airlines, they reported it. We knew there were going to be issues because the CrowdStrike, Microsoft issue an outage, but it seems like it was a little more than that.
Exactly. I mean, I think that a lot of people are coming in thinking about CrowdStrike more broadly, especially as we're thinking a lot about these travel stocks, but we are seeing shares of Delta lower in trading. But one thing to note is that the stock is trading ex-dividend today. So something to keep in mind as you're looking at percentages. But right now we have shares down about roughly 2%. And this is after the company issued fourth quarter sales and profit forecasts that fell short of Wall Street estimates. But really, they were looking at the summer in which there was an oversupply of U.S. flight capacity that left many carriers scrambling to cut ticket prices and also pull back flying plans. So that has really weighed on the stock, and a lot of people are looking at Delta to see how it will move forward in addition to a lot of its competitors here.
So I guess the post-pandemic travel surge, that's played out, I guess.
Apparently so.
Airlines. So now we're getting back to, I guess, more normalized activity, normalized, then I guess all the airlines had to adjust their fleets and their capacity.
But you did say that the holiday season still looks good. I was just surprised that do people really not travel because of U.S. elections?
I was about to bring that up.
Apparently that's true. He goes back for years, but I don't get
And I
it.
had to listen to the commentary today. It's interesting. You know, companies throw out things all the time, little things just to brace in case there are something.
Coverage of Israel's war on Gaza looks at how millions of people around the world took a stand to demand a ceasefire. Plus, 4 people are dead in Florida's Hurricane Milton as emergency crews work to rescue people trapped in their homes. The United Nations peacekeeping force in Lebanon, UNIFIL, says Israeli troops have repeatedly opened fire on its positions in the south. 2 UN peacekeepers were injured when an Israeli tank fired on an observation tower in the mission's headquarters in Nakura. Israeli forces also hit other UN positions in that area. The attacks have damaged United Nations facilities and equipment, with reports of deliberate targeting of surveillance cameras and communication systems. Italy has summoned the Israeli ambassador to Rome in response to this incident. Some of the most recent Israeli airstrikes have been in Lebanon's eastern Bekaa Valley. 4 people have been killed. Asad Bey joins us live now from Karak, that's in the Bekaa Valley. What's the latest?
Well, there was an airstrike on this building behind me in a residential area in Karak, near Zahle in Bekaa. Now, what we know from the authorities so far is that the ambulance is taking those injured away. Fire crews are still on site trying to put out some of those fires. We've heard some noises behind us. We believe still some rubble and floors collapsing. They're still looking for people that may be trapped underneath this rubble. Now, this attack took place, I believe, just under an hour ago, and the impact has been massive. Around 200 meters at least around the surrounding area, the windows have been blown out. There is rubble strewn across the street, across people's homes. Car windows have been broken. But also tensions here are very, very high. People are very angry. They're angry at Israel. They're angry at the media. And people are just in shock. I can't get my cameraman to turn the camera around to show you some of the people standing around, but I saw families outside covering their mouths, covering their faces, just in complete and utter shock at this strike, because it has hit in the center of a residential area. Now, this isn't the first time that Zahle or Karak has been hit, but you can see they're still trying to put out some of the fires there. But increasingly, we're seeing more strikes on residential areas across Bekaa as Israel intensifies its air campaign, not only in southern Lebanon and Beirut, but here in Bekaa in eastern Ukraine. But so far, what I can tell you is that the latest figures are 4 people killed and 17 injured. And we have heard from the authorities that there may be some people still trapped underneath.
That's Al Jazeera's Asad Bey there with the very latest reporting from the Bekaa Valley. Thank you very much, Asad. Now, Israeli strikes in southern Lebanon have killed at least 10 people, including 5 medical staff. Lebanese healthcare workers say that they're facing unprecedented dangers as a result of Israel's military campaign. In the past 3 weeks alone, at least 55 paramedics have been killed in Israeli airstrikes. Many first responders say air raids often follow their arrival at rescue sites. The World Health Organization says at least 40 health centers and 2 hospitals have been forced to stop operations. It also warns of potential medical supply shortages since operations at Beirut Airport have been disrupted. Myrna Dumet is a faculty member at the School of Nursing at the American University of Beirut, and she said living under bombardment creates a constant state of fear and uncertainty.
No kidding.
It has been.
The market is starting to go up a little bit. It's still negative for the S&P 500, but it's at 5,787 at this moment in time. What is interesting is the VIX has gone down a little bit, and it's trading at around 2079. And oil is trading at 74.40. So, and the high point of the crisis in the Middle East, oil for WTI was trading at around 78 after hours a few days ago.
People who are severely injured because of the bombardments. And this is really affecting the healthcare system, affecting the healthcare workers, nurses, physicians. And I don't need to mention that several hospitals were evacuated. So many of their patients were put in other hospitals who, quote unquote, are considered safer, which means an added burden on the healthcare workers working in those hospitals. We do have colleagues who are working in the South. Some of them left, others are still working. And of course, the situation is very bad for them. Other than seeing people that they know coming injured, dead, they are working under danger. At any time, any second, they are at risk of being bombarded and killed. And this is what we, the Order of Nurses in Lebanon, sent to the International Council of Nurses, ICN, to speak up and to support nurses in Lebanon, because we're working under bombardments.
Israel has continuously bombarded Beirut's southern suburbs, saying it is targeting Hezbollah sites. Many of those living in the densely populated Dahye area have fled, but those who haven't been able to leave say they're terrified.
My neighbors might flee as well. The building just shakes. You can't stay in because the strikes are close. Yesterday I was at home hoping nothing happens, but then they hit us nearby.
Switch.
They're higher. Oddly, they're higher since the Fed's announcement to lower the interbank loan rate, but that'll correct itself in the next few weeks or so. But it's not necessarily what rate will have to come about such that folks will start to begin to sell those 2.75 for 8% loans. What will happen, probably more likely for those folks, is they'll have a change in life event. I'm moving to another city. Unfortunately, financial distress will cause a lot of sales. So a lot of these things are going to be brought back. A lot of these properties are going to be brought back into the marketplace because I have to sell rather than I want to sell. But we're probably going to see an environment. We'll get back to the 4.5, 5s. We're never. I don't think in my professional lifetime will we ever see 2.75 or 3% again. That was just so unusual, and we can't have that as the norm. And we're not back to the norm. Well, that wasn't the norm.
Yeah. I was doing a little happy dance for those of you who are unfortunate.
She's smug.
Yes.
I am.
There's an air of smugness.
It's the one thing literally the one thing I can brag about, and so I do. When you're talking about it still being a cyclical industry, how long do you think that cycle then could be? Like, when do we get to like an oversupply situation? 10 years? What does it look like?
So hard to say. Again, the cycle, this last cycle has been extended for several reasons, one of which is COVID, and we were talking about the low interest rates. We were pretty near a peak back in 20-ish, and then we had COVID, and we all had much easier access to capital, shortage of housing, we bid prices up. This is going to be quite some time. We're years in the catch-up, so minimum another 3 to 4 years to catch up, maximum a decade.
All right, you just made the big move from Boca Raton, Florida Atlantic University, to Oxford, Mississippi. 30 seconds. What's the big difference?
Well, I have the best of both worlds now. Originally I'm from the South, and I've always loved, or that dreamt of being at a state university flagship school, SEC football and sports. I love Boca, so we kept a place there in Boca. My wife and I have, and we will continue to be there in the summers and at Christmas time. You know, to me, anything above I-10 is like a reflecting barrier in terms of winter cold. But if you come to Oxford, you would understand why I wouldn't pass on this opportunity to come here and build a program.
Yeah, fantastic. Ole Miss. Ken Johnson, Walker Family Chair of Real Estate at the University of Mississippi. That is in Oxford, Mississippi. I just kind of Googled mapped that. I always forget where Oxford is. It's the northwestern part of the state. It's very close to Memphis, Tennessee, actually.
Oh,
and it's close to the Arkansas River. But it is, it's deep SEC country.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the resveratrol. Resveratrol is something I've been taking for decades. It couples really well with other antioxidants. In addition, resveratrol helps to get rid of senesced cells. Senesced cells are cells that stop dividing, and they start to build up toxins. So you want to get rid of those. It also helps with mitochondrial health. So and it's an antioxidant. So please go to the store and add resveratrol to your protocol. I've been taking resveratrol and stacked it with many other different antioxidants like ubiquinol and C60. D3, very important to help to absorb calcium. When you couple it with vitamin K2, which is on my store, you can improve your cardiovascular health and your bone health. In addition, it is a gene expression cofactor, which is really important. So you can express those genes, and so the cells are performing properly. In addition, if the cell needs to go into apoptosis, vitamin D3 helps that process. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get vitamin D3. Digestive enzyme complex, really important to reduce that load on your pancreas. As we get older, our pancreas isn't as robust. And so you need digestive enzymes to help break up carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids. In addition, by taking this and you're reducing the load on your pancreas, you're breaking up those food particles and you're able to absorb them better. And when you're absorbing your nutrients better, you're going to be able to have more energy. In addition, these digestive enzymes are, especially the proteolytic ones, break up glycoproteins. And bromelain, which is in this digestive enzyme complex, helps to break up clots because it's fibrinolytic. Very important. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the digestive enzyme complex. Lastly, lignans. It's a powder. You mix it with water or with your food. It's really important. Why? Because it helps to boost up your immune system. All of our immune systems are trashed. It's really important to boost up your immune system, especially in the aftershock of 2020. So what you need to do is take this every day. It brings down inflammation, all right, and it's an antioxidant. Are you starting to see a theme here? Neutralize pathogens, soak up those free radicals with antioxidants, and bring down inflammation, and you'll get healthier. Amazing how that works. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get this very high quality product, all right? Take it every day. There's a scooper, it's a powder, you mix it, bam, and will improve your immune system. Now, I want to go to Al Jazeera and see if they have anything.
Plastic bag is shredded. He was able to recognize already from the clothes that she was wearing. That's the hardest part that we have been seeing so far here at the hospital. The situations continue to be very difficult inside the emergency department where medical staff are pretty much unable to provide any necessary medical intervention to save lives. The operating theater is fully packed and many of the injured are still on the floor of the emergency department waiting for their turn to be to have surgeries and to be saved from what's going on. Here's what we know from what we've seen so far. The bomb that was dropped by the F-16 packed with nails, packed with pieces of metals and shrapnel that cut through the flesh and caused severe bleedings. Many of the victims arriving at the hospital, really their blood filled out the courtyard of the hospital the moment the door of the ambulance vehicle opened, and we're seeing this happening inside the emergency department. Cleaners were rushing just to clean up the mess that was caused by the blood that fully soaked the entire area. The situation continued to be very tragic and very difficult at all levels here at the hospital.
Hani Mahmoud reporting there from inside the Gaza Strip. That's the scene just outside the hospital in Deir al-Balah. Thanks to you and your team, Hani. Now, the Israeli army is also laying siege to the Jabalia refugee camp. That's in the north of the Strip. They're preventing the entry of food, water, and medicine. An employee of Gaza's civil defense based in the Jabalia refugee camp says Israeli forces are targeting medical teams.
For the past 6 days, the Jabalia refugee camp in northern Gaza has been under a heavy siege imposed by the Israeli army from all directions. This is coupled with intensive aerial bombardment by Israeli warplanes, drone attacks, and artillery shelling. These attacks have been uninterrupted, mostly targeting residential areas and sheltering centers. The Israelis had issued warnings for residents to evacuate, the entire Jabalia area. Yet thousands of Palestinian civilians are holding their ground, be it in their ruined homes or sheltering centers. Both Kamal Adwan and Al-Oda hospitals continue to serve our people, despite repeated threats by the Israelis to turn both hospitals into ruins, just like what they did to Al-Shifa Hospital.
Oil just broke $75 a barrel, WTI.
Appeal to the international community to help maintain the few hospitals operating in Gaza and to continue providing minimum healthcare services to our people who are suffering under merciless bombardments and ruthless shelling by the Israelis. Dead bodies are decomposed and eaten by stray dogs, and many survivors are left to bleed to their death. If those hospitals come out of service, it will be a disaster. The Israeli army continues to target civil defense and paramedic teams, preventing us from even reaching out to the victims to recover the dead or help survivors. However, we will continue to serve our people no matter what. We reiterate our appeal to the Red Cross, WHO, and the entire international community to at least help coordinate access for medical teams into the affected areas, simply to help save lives.
Still ahead on Al Jazeera, painting Palestinian heroes. We meet the graffiti artists on the streets of London for
But that doesn't necessarily mean that the economy is reaccelerating. So we kind of want to understand the nuance here. Here's Lindsay Piggs, chief economist over at Stifel. She joins us from Minneapolis. Lindsay, how would you categorize the CPI data this morning, and does it change the trajectory at all for the Fed?
No, it's not going to change the trajectory of the Fed. It's not going to change the trajectory of the Fed because the Fed fucked up and they can't go back because they're going to lose credibility. So they're just going to have to suck it up. And not only that, they're trying to juice up the market for Harris.
Desperately to reinstate price stability. Now, it's important not to look at one data point. That's never enough to sway the Fed in one direction or the other, but we do have to put this in the context of an ongoing lack of even downward momentum in prices. At best, inflation has been uneven, moving sideways for the past couple of months. And so this really underscores the need for the Fed to remain focused on reaching that 2% target. Now, last month, they were buoyed by this mounting concern for the labor market. But as we saw in the latest September labor market data, the employment reports are still near full employment. The data suggests the labor market is still very solid. And so I do think that at this point, the Fed's focus may be better directed towards that price stability component of the dual mandate.
You know, Lindsay, we were talking to Tom Keene and I earlier today with Professor Cam Harvey at Duke University, and he's a big proponent of the Fed's way behind because they're using really dated data, particularly housing data. And if you take a look at some of the real rents and stuff like that, inflation's already whipped, and this Fed should be, cutting rates maybe. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think there's a number of different ways to look at inflation. And sure, if we take out some of the stickiest components, you can get a much better read on inflation. But when we're trying to look at the overall price index for consumers, what we're feeling in terms of costs for goods and services out in the marketplace, that underlying core measure, which excludes food and energy because those are extremely volatile from a policy standpoint, that suggests that inflation is not, quote, whipped. And that the Fed's job of reinstating price stability has not been complete, and remaining on a downward trajectory back to 2% is not a foregone conclusion. So I would caution against that line of thinking. That could leave us in a very difficult position where the Fed takes a more aggressive approach to policy in anticipation of further improvement, only to find out we're not there yet. And the Fed either has to reverse course or simply has driven us into the most unfavorable scenario of stagflation at that point.
But that brings us to the other data point, which is initial jobless claims. I know they can be volatile. I know you also have a Hurricane Helene as well as the Boeing strike impact. Like there's those reads too. So which path does the Fed follow? Like inflation slowing less than we thought, or initial jobless claims rising more than we thought?
Well, I think you have to put the jobless claims, as you said, in the context of the events that are occurring in the economy at this point. Between the strikes and the hurricanes,
we anticipated a lot of volatility. And you can tell that this is an outsized increase relative to the very calm trend that has been well established for the past couple of years. You also have to put this one weekly data point in the context of, again, that September employment report, where we see wages, we see job vacancies, we see the participation rate, we see top-line hiring, all suggesting tight-ish conditions, lingering tight-ish conditions for the labor market, which does not support this pop in weekly jobless claims, again, which is primarily a reflection of some of these one-off incidents in the economy. The Fed knows that. The Fed is not going to adjust policy based on a weekly data point. But again, it does underscore this bifurcation among Fed officials. As we saw in the minutes yesterday, there are a number of Fed officials that are concerned about the labor market and say that we should continue to cut in anticipation of weakness to support the labor market and the broader economy, regardless of what it takes. On the other side, you have Governor Bowman leading the pack saying, no, there's still upside risk to inflation, and that's where we need to keep our focus, because without price stability, the economy doesn't work for anybody.
How about the consumer, Lindsay, given some of the data points you've seen over the last couple of weeks? What's your read on the U.S. consumer?
Well, I think the consumer is surprisingly resilient at this point. The consumer is still out in the marketplace spending on goods and services, but they're doing so at a noticeably reduced pace. We've gone from double digits to 8 to 6, now down to an average pace of 3. Again, still positive, but a very clear second derivative decline or slower pace of positive expenditures as consumers are feeling the weight of higher prices, higher borrowing costs, the resumption of student debt payments. And so we see consumers increasingly turning to these less organic measures for support in order to keep spending in the marketplace. We see 401k hardship withdrawals up double digits. We see consumers turning to an intergenerational wealth transfer. And of course, surprise, surprise.
Do you really think that these one-time, things where you're taking hardship withdrawals from the 401k or you're getting some sort of inheritance that's going to be a long-term, structurally sound economy? Of course not. Of course not. And what's going to happen is the Federal Reserve is going to juice up the market and equities will keep on climbing because the hot money has to go somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Lindsay, thanks a lot. Really appreciate it. I still feel like it's all a Rorschach test at the end of the day. Lindsay Piegza, as she joins us from Stifel. Let's get back to the impact of Hurricane Milton. There's many ways to look at it. We just talked about the housing markets. Now let's talk about the commodity market. It's a supply and it's a demand issue. You have to shut down rigs, shut down production. That's one thing. And at the flip side, you don't have people driving around. That's a demand issue. Let's see how long all of that winds up lasting. Vincent Piazza, Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Equity Research Analyst for Oil and Gas, joining us now. Hey, Vincent, how long do you think until we get a good sense from the oil and gas guys what the hurricane impact is?
Well, I think we are seeing it right now. I mean, if we think about the Category 3s that we've seen go through the region, demand, at least demand that we're tracking right now, we're off roughly between 1.5 to 2 BCF a day, and it's really the impact on the natural gas side because we roughly have, call it 3.5 million customers without power in the Florida area. 70% of the power stack is supplied by natural gas. So that's where the conversation needs to be on the natural gas impact. We did dodge a bullet. There is a silver lining. This storm was supposed to be much more powerful, and it is unfortunate that we still have the damage that we have, but we did dodge a bullet. The damage could have been much more severe. The demand, the consumption that we lost, that is a permanent loss. Whereas the production, that's still behind pipe, right? That is still just curtailed. So that will still be there. And that's why we have balances loosening right now. Earlier in the month, we had natural gas prices, Henry Hub prices closer to 3. Now we're down to somewhere around 264, 265. So the true impact is on the consumption side. The good news is, unfortunately, Florida is used to these types of weather disasters, weather incidents. So the demand side of the equation, we should see that coming back depending on how quickly the utilities can get power back up and running. But you have 3 million people without power. Milton has compounded the effects of Helene, so that consumption is offline, permanently lost, whereas the production is just being delayed. So also the good news, Paul and Alex, is we're right around this shoulder season where demand is not as significant if this would have happened in the month of August or July, where heat is definitely an issue in Southeast. It would have been much more impactful.
So longer term, like 6 months, 12 months, when you think about nat gas, Vince, where do you think it goes and what drives it?
In the interim, it's really demand driven because of the impacts of the storm and how quickly we can get people back up and running, how the infrastructure can recover. But on the production end, we're roughly down 1 BCF. We don't get a lot of natural gas production from the Gulf of Mexico anymore. But again, that's just delayed output. The real impact is on the demand side. And so for us as natural gas analysts, the next true crucial catalyst is the winter season across the Midwest and the Northeast. That'll be the next big driver. But what we're going to see here is that as we get through this injection season, this shoulder season, we should have relatively sufficient natural gas in storage. So that should be a temporary weight on natural gas prices as we head into the winter season. So at that point, we turn to the amount of output. And quite frankly, the output is running a little hotter than what we would have expected at this time.
All right, Vincent, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Vincent Piazza, Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Equity Research Analyst for Oil and Gas, joining us there. Should point out is that Thomas Parkin from the Fed is in a Q&A right now. Richmond Fed President, he's saying that inflation's down significantly, but you can't declare victory yet. It feels like all Fed officials now are united against sort of not committing one way or the other and being cautious of those two-sided risks of inflation as well as growth. All right, coming up, Tim Craighead, Bloomberg Intelligence Global Chief Content Officer, will be joining us.
So oil went up to 75 and then dropped back down to 74.70. Let me do a commercial here. Please go to my store, vela-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the collagen. What this will do is help to build up your bones, your joints, the ligaments, your tendons, and your skin, all right? Your hair and your nails. It's really important to take every day. You get a gigantic scooper here. You take it each day. You mix it with water or food, or some people take it with milk. You take it every day. I also have an anti-aging skincare beginners and advanced box that you can purchase to help to improve your skin more robustly with a lot of different supplements that are added to the collagen protocol. But please go to my store and get the collagen. I have a great amino acid profile here. So please go to the store, take it every day to improve your skin, your hair, your nails, your bones, your joints. NAC, really important to take. I added it to my protocol, my daily protocol. NAC helps to bring up the glutathione levels. Glutathione is another pathway to soak up free radicals. Really important, okay? So please go to the store, get the NAC, boost up those glutathione levels, soak up those free radicals. This is synergistic with C60. So the more ways that you're attacking the free radicals, the better, to be able to bring down that cellular stress and to slow down the aging process and the stress in the cell and in your tissues. This will also help to detoxify your liver and your kidney and help with anxiety. There are a lot of people that have anxiety issues, they're in sympathetic mode, and you want to go into a parasympathetic mode and be more calm. That way you'll have less stress, you'll have less cortisol, you'll have less inflammation. If you're stressed out all the time, you have a lot of anxiety, you're in a pro-inflammatory response, and you don't want that because that lowers your immune system. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the NAC. Nattokinase, very important for cardiovascular health. Nattokinase will break up clots. It's fibrinolytic. In addition, nattokinase will help to bring down your LDL levels and raise your HDL levels. It is synergistic with omega-3. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and improve your cardiovascular health. All right, what's going on in Al Jazeera here? Or not Al Jazeera, this is France
Lebanon's
24.
government
This is France
estimates that some
24.
1.2 million people have now been displaced because of Israel's deadly campaign, many flocking to the capital city centre. The influx has overwhelmed already strained services in the crisis-hit country. More than 900 schools have become makeshift shelters, but most are full, leaving many to fend for themselves. Compounding the situation, the conflict is reigniting tensions between Lebanon's different communities. Most of the displaced are Shia, the same religious group as Hezbollah, meaning many other Lebanese are scared of helping them in case they too become targets for Israel. Is there anyone who's not scared of war, especially that we have a child with us? God help us and help the people. As Israeli strikes continue, calls are growing to safeguard the country's only airport, located precariously close to Hezbollah's southern Beirut stronghold. Despite most airlines suspending services over security concerns, it has served as an evacuation hub for people fleeing. It's also a lifeline for aid, as UNICEF told France 24.
We need to make sure that humanitarian access routes into the country remain open. And we're really pleading to the international community to mobilise support for this humanitarian effort, to advocate for those humanitarian corridors to remain open, and of course, above all else, a ceasefire.
In response to the unfolding violence and growing need, the EU last week said it was ramping up spending on humanitarian assistance to Lebanon by 30 million euros.
Now, President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine is on a diplomatic tour this week as he seeks more military support against the Russian army. This morning, he was in London meeting the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and the head of NATO, Mark Rutte. This afternoon, he touched down here in Paris, where he is currently meeting President Macron at the Elysee Palace. With more on their tete-a-tete, here's our reporter, James Andre.
Well, what Zelensky is trying to get with this tour of Europe is to shore up support, long-term support for the fight in Ukraine against Russia.
Let's get this straight. Let's get this straight. Macron wants to give more weapons to Zelensky so he can have a war with Russia. But he wants to suppress the weapons to Israel so Israel can't fight the war with Hezbollah.
Will commit some more money and weapons and also support to his country in this fight. This morning, indeed, he met with Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister, and Mark Rutte, who is the new Secretary General of NATO, and he will be moving on after this visit to Paris, to Italy, where he will meet Giorgia Meloni and the Pope. Tomorrow, he will be going to Germany. Now, in the past few days, there's been a lot of diplomatic wrangling on the European level with an objective for the European Commission of the European Union to loan 35 billion euros worth of aid to Ukraine, a loan that would be paid off by the interest of the frozen Russian assets, most of which are in Europe. Initially, the plan was a bit different. It was supposed to include the United States, Japan, basically G7 nations, and also Canada. But indeed, for now, this is a European initiative, so we'll have to see if it materializes here. For Emmanuel Macron, the objective is to show that indeed he is with Ukraine all the way. This was in a communique that was issued by the Elysee Palace, saying that indeed he wanted to show that France was committed on the long term to supporting Ukraine.
James Andre for us there. Now, today is World Mental Health Day, and the theme this year is mental health in the workplace. In this next report,
please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Myotrol. Myotrol will help you build muscle and maintain muscle. This is very, very important if you are an athlete or if you're aging. Why? Because when you're an athlete, you need, nutrition and you need supplementation to build muscle, all right? When you're older, it's harder for you to build muscle and to maintain muscle, and you need proper supplementation and nutrition. So please go to the store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get Myotrol. It'll help to build muscle and maintain muscle and improve your mitochondria. Mitochondria is a organelle that helps to produce ATP. ATP is a major source of energy for your body and for your muscles. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get Myotrol to improve your mitochondrial health and to build muscle and maintain muscle. So it's a very high quality product. So please take it every day if you want to maintain your muscle and be healthy. This is very important when you get older because there's a lot of people atrophying with their muscle. What happens is their muscle mass goes down and they start to gain more adipose tissue. So please, it's really important to maintain that muscle mass. Go to my store and get the Myotrol. Omega-3, very important for cardiovascular health. It helps to prevent your red blood cells from sticking. It is synergistic with nattokinase. In addition, it brings down LDL levels and raises your HDL levels. That's important. So you're reducing the chances of building up plaques, right? You want to lower that probability by lowering the LDL. HDL helps to kind of eat up cholesterol. It's called the good cholesterol, HDL. Bad cholesterol is LDL. You want to bring that down, right? If you have a lot of LDL and you have a lot of free radicals, you're going to have oxidized LDL and a buildup of plaque, especially if you are chronically inflamed. So please take my advice and get the omega-3, take it every day, bring down your LDL levels, raise your HDL levels, and get those blood cells from sticking too much. Stop that process and get the cells to not stick so you don't have as many clotting issues. It's synergistic with nattokinase. Cardiovascular disease is a big problem in the United States. And if you listen to me, you can move in the direction to reduce and mitigate that problem. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. All right, what's going on here? What's going on in Bloomberg?
Sports. Talk to us about that because I feel like I know they're an Asian company, so I'm assuming this has a China call to it.
It does, with an interesting twist. Anta is a sportswear company. They have a number of brands. I think when I've been on your show before, you may have seen that I've had an Arc'teryx vest on.
Are you like one of the same as like an extreme biker, climber, hiker, all the stuff that I just have no interest in.
Good for you, Jim. I got nothing on that.
But no, Arc'teryx is owned by Anta. But the reason why Anta is on here is twofold. Number one, they do have a lot of things going on from the standpoint of driving their business with various brands. And the Olympics play through. We'll get results when they report next in terms of how good it's been. The China national team wore Anta Sports kit. But it's also a case you've seen lots of news about Adidas and Nike and how they're trying to get their inventory under control. That's making pricing better for sportswear generally, and we think that that's playing through into Anta Sports margins as a corollary.
That's interesting, because when you compare it to, like, say, Nike, I understand they do different things, but still. You have Alstom on here. So this is basically straight up railroad stock. Why do you guys like this one?
Well, there's two things here. If you were to look at a 3-year, 5-year type chart, you would see that this company has gone through some problems. They had a big write-off and problem.
I want to go here to the EU.
In the European Union's development, you heard about the economic challenges that the European Union's facing. But as a new European Commission mandate starts in a month or two's time, it's really important that that new European Commission grapples these challenges.
So good timing from that point of view. From a broader point of view, is it potentially too late to catch up with the US and China in certain industries anyway?
No, I don't think it is, and the report makes clear what needs to be done in order to address those challenges. It's true, as Mr. Draghi sets out, that Europe faces the loss of three main forces that have laid behind our competitiveness over the last decades. That's a relatively open global trading system, access to competitively priced energy, and a relatively benign security environment. But he also sets out, through large amounts of public and private investment, how we can turn those challenges into opportunities for growth and improved productivity in the European economy.
One of the challenges that the EU often runs into when they're trying to rejig their strategies like this is the need for consensus among the 27 member states. Do these proposals on industry really stand a chance of being enacted?
I think significant parts of them do stand a chance of being enacted, and as we've seen, President Ursula von der Leyen has made clear that these should be a key part of the instructions that a new Commission team should follow as they take up their mandates in a couple of months' time. However, there are certainly challenges, and as Mr. Draghi makes clear, there are areas where European decision-making is still relatively risk-averse, and also in a fast-moving and fast-changing global environment, often a bit slow to respond to significant changes.
What about the question of money in all this? We've seen this proposal that would see many of these changes financed with common debt. Is that feasible? Is it affordable?
So that's something, I guess, that politicians in the European Union member states will have to decide, and people have been putting forward their views both for and against that proposal. I guess from Mr. Draghi's point of view, he pointed to the way in which European-level debt was agreed to in order to help the EU respond to the COVID crisis. In his view, I think, the competitiveness and growth challenge is another crisis that he hopes will lead to an appropriate response from European policymakers.
Which sectors would you say are struggling the most, and which could really stand to benefit from some bloc-sponsored investments here?
Well, I think there are a number of areas that he identifies. Firstly, I think we probably shouldn't just focus on struggling sectors, if we want to characterize them that, or middle technologies, as he calls them. I think it's also worth looking at sectors that can be vectors for growth. And if you look at the examples of both the US and China, sectors like tech and digital and also the green economy can be significant growth vectors. And those are areas I think we should look at. However, it's clear that energy prices in particular, exacerbated by the consequences of the war in Ukraine and the impacts on global energy supplies, are significantly higher in Europe than elsewhere, and that is really impacting energy-intensive industries. And it's good to see a whole chapter focused on those sectors like steel or chemicals and what can be done to help.
And when we look at the high-tech industry in particular, we know that there are relatively few European unicorns or really highly valued startups. Is that something that could potentially change if we see some of these proposals enacted?
Yes, it is something that could change, and that's something the report really focuses on. What we currently have is.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the magnesium zinc. This is important to boost up your immune system. We're in the cold season in the United States. If you're sick, take a double dose of this, drink it with filtered water. Should be taking it every day. Vitamin K2, very important to help with your bones, your joints, your ligaments, your tendons, and also your cardiovascular system. So please go to my store and get the vitamin K2. NAD+. NAD+ helps to boost up your energy levels. It will help to repair DNA damage. When you get older, we have a lot of DNA that's damaged that needs to be repaired, and we kind of overload our repair mechanism, and so it increases the aging process. And it's also a supplement to help with the health of your neurons. And as we get older, we need to maintain healthy neurons. So please, take NAD+ every day. It's synergistic with some of the other things like ubiquinol and resveratrol and C60, right? So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the NAD Plus and repair that DNA damage. And since we're talking about ubiquinol, ubiquinol is CoQ10. It's the active form for CoQ10. I've been taking ubiquinol for many, many, many years, all right? There's a lot of benefits for taking ubiquinol. Ubiquinol increases the energy levels. It helps with mitochondrial health. It's an antioxidant, and it also helps to improve the health of your neurons. That's the reason why it is synergistic with NAD+. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get ubiquinol, all right? What's going on with Bloomberg here?
Rolled about what Israel may do in terms of a retaliatory strike.
Well, I mean, we know that there's going to be a cabinet meeting, a security cabinet meeting, where they will decide or approve what to do. We know too that there's been quite a bit of tension between the Prime Minister Netanyahu and the Biden administration over exactly what to do. The Israeli defense minister was supposed to go to Washington, before the security cabinet meeting, before Netanyahu spoke with President Biden yesterday on the phone. But Netanyahu nixed that trip. So, although we don't know exactly, the details of what they're arguing about, the broad outline is that the U.S. administration doesn't want Israel to hit nuclear facilities in Iran, doesn't want them to hit the major oil infrastructure. And obviously, that's it sounds like there's some tension around that.
What in your
So in other
research,
words, the U.S. is supposedly telling the Israelis, don't fight back, don't knock out Iran, don't decapitate the Ayatollah and the theocratic regime, and let them go on a path of nuclear development. Lovely, lovely. I'm sure that's going to all play out real well.
It would be a good target to hit.
Well, there are an enormous number of possibilities for the Israelis to go after. They have the capabilities. They've shown that when they responded in a very, very limited, precise way to the last barrage of Iranian missiles. That was back in April. And they just took out the air defenses near Isfahan, which cover a nuclear facility, a known nuclear facility. And they unlike the Iranian barrage, which was 300 missiles, it was very small, very targeted, very successful. So, we know that they have lots of targets. What I would see as, would put Iran and the Supreme Leader in a very difficult position would be if they had a proportionate response where they go after the military assets of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. They control the ballistic missiles and launchers that have been used against Israel. They're also, they organize the so-called Axis of Resistance that has been attacking Israel. So they are a completely legitimate target. The response would be understood, throughout the region. And they are also, these are assets that pose a direct threat to Israel. If you think about the ballistic missiles, these are what would be required if Iran was to get and to develop a nuclear warhead. They need the ballistic missiles to carry them. So they are, important targets, legitimate targets. And this is something that the U.S., for example, could accept, Europe would accept, and a lot of regional leaders would accept.
But Mark, there's also reporting that there are those in the Israeli government that says this is the time to go big and maybe go after not just energy assets, but perhaps some of their nuclear capabilities.
Damn right.
How much influence and sway do you think they're having in the debate these days?
They have a great deal. I mean, we've seen that they have a great deal of sway. The cabinet, the government that Netanyahu runs, it depends on their support at various critical junctures to do with whether there should be a ceasefire, for example, in Gaza. They've intervened to say that we will collapse the government if there is one. So they are very
so
important.
if you look at your screen for the ones that are seeing the dashboard, Israel. So it was printed at 10:57. So just a minute ago, Israel offensive leaves quarter of Lebanon under evacuation orders. And I'm also seeing oil start to increase.
We do have sway, and there is a logic, for the Israelis. The Hezbollah, for example, was what the Iranians called their forward defense. It was their main deterrent against Israel attacking Iran's nuclear facilities, for example, because
let's think about this for a second. Let's think about this for a second. Iran's worried about getting attacked and shutting off their theocratic regime and their development of nuclear weapons. So they fund Hezbollah and Hamas. And it's like killing two birds with one stone because they don't like Israel either. So they want to have this kind of like proxy war effort to keep the enemy at bay. So the theocratic regime in Iran, maintains its hold on its people. Lovely, lovely. And then we have an international community that says, Israel, don't bomb Iran. Don't bomb Iran. Stupid, stupid, stupid. I'm telling you, if we don't do this, if the international community in Israel doesn't galvanize and knock on Iran, we are going to be having bigger problems down the road that we may not be able to solve. And now I personally think that from the metaphysical perspective here, that America is going to be super cursed. We are a country of blessing. But if we keep on making the wrong move, that blessing could go away. And we won't be as productive. I mean, our population, average IQ in the population is 98 now. Now, there's several reasons for that. Bad diet, chemicals in our food, the bread and circus, and social media that's dumbing down the nation. The average IQ in the United States is 98. Now, that's unacceptable. Now, there's some people that are way higher than that. And there's some people lower than that. But the average IQ is 98. Now, that data set is from 2022. I suspect that it's worse now. But maybe it just stays the same. Americans need to wake up. They got to get off of the smart devices and spending so much time on that. Stop spending your time on bread and circus and get educated. And it doesn't mean you have to be formally educated and have tons of degrees. But learn stuff. Read and write. Stop spending so much time on X and on Facebook. You're wasting your time. You have a limited amount of time. Now, metaphysically, the day you're born is the number, it's already known the number of days that you're going to live. Either premature death or you live a long life. But that's a metaphysical, Kabbalistic perspective. All right? But the thing here is that you have a set date to die. All right? So take advantage of it. Make the world a better place. Try to live as healthy as you can. All right? And that if you do the right things, your life will have blessing, not curse. But America has been a blessed nation for 200 years or more. But the thing is that our people and our decision makers and our leaders are screwing things up. And there's a curse coming if we don't self-correct. Now, you can take my advice or not take my advice, just like with the supplements. You can take my advice and get healthy and have a better immune system and slow down the aging process. Or don't take the advice and have chronic disease and wither away quicker and have less vitality. You can take the advice and try to get that blessing for the country, or not take the advice and waste your time. The far majority of the people in the United States are screwing things up. And it's from leaders all the way down. Now that includes everybody in the country. We're not doing enough to bring a blessing to the nation, to deserve the blessing. So we have all this infighting. We have to do the right thing, and Iran has to be destroyed. The theocratic regime of Iran needs to be decapitated. Literally.
Missiles that it could launch from a very short distance. Hezbollah has been, significantly degraded. Hamas even more so. So there is a real, body of thought in Israel that says this is the time. We'll never have a better one. It's a transition in the U.S. as well. There is a vacuum where any pushback, a real pushback might be. So this is the moment. The problem there is the same as it's always been, which is that it's very difficult to actually eliminate a nuclear program that, number one, is buried under mountains.
That's why the United States needs to work with Israel to get the job done. Comprende?
It's largely a matter of knowledge rather than material, so it can always be rebuilt. So it's, there's a reason why the U.S. has resisted, the Pentagon has resisted doing this for a decade now. Even when there were, President Bush, for example, George W. Bush wanted to do it.
All right, Mark, we appreciate it. Your insight is always, always, always important for us. Mark Champion, Bloomberg Opinion columnist, joining us there on what the targets may be and how the thought process may play out with Israel when it comes to responding to Iran after missile strikes. We're going to have much more coming up in the next hour.
All right. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60. You can get it in the extra virgin olive oil. You can get it in MCT coconut oil and also in avocado oil. You can get it in a 2-ounce, a 4-ounce, or an 8-ounce configuration. Take a teaspoon of it a day. That will soak up the free radicals, and it's very potent. And by soaking up those free radicals, you're going to reduce the cellular stress, and you're going to improve your mitochondrial health. You're going to have more energy. You're going to have more ATP, and that's really important for your tissues and for your immune system. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60 either in the 2-ounce, the 4-ounce, or the 8-ounce configuration in extra virgin olive oil, MCT coconut oil, or avocado oil. C60 isn't an oil because C60 is lipid soluble. Lastly, zeolite is a way to get heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals out of your body. You can take this every day, take a couple drops underneath your tongue, swallow it with filtered water, and it's a negatively charged molecule. It'll soak up those positively charged heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals. By detoxifying your body with zeolite, you can get rid of forever chemicals. Not completely, but you can diminish it quite a bit, all right? In addition, you need to filter your water, all right? You got to stop bringing in those chemicals into your body. That means you have to, be careful with the types of chemicals that are in your house for cleaning. Be cognizant of that. Be cognizant of the type of cookware you use. Filter your water, use a 5 filtration system or something better, but I use a 5-level filtration system called Zero Water. Make sure you stop eating packaged foods and, heavily pesticized foods, right? Try to eat as healthy as you can. Fast food's terrible for you. And detoxify your body, right? You improve your food and your water and detoxify your body. And there's lots of ways to detoxify your body. There's colon cleanses, there's liver cleanses, there's kidney cleanses, right? There's yeast cleanses and all this stuff, parasitic cleanses. But also, zeolite will help to detoxify your body too, and you can take it every day. Some people only want to do once or twice a year. So for the ones that are doing it once or twice a year, take a few drops underneath your tongue, drink it with filtered water, and you just use up the bottle. Take the few drops each day with the filtered water, use up the bottle, and then you're done with the detox for the year, and you can do that once or twice a year. It's up to you. But you get better coverage if you take a couple drops each day throughout the year, every year. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Now, if you're on medication, talk to your doctor first before taking zeolite, because he or she might have to increase your dosage of your medication to make sure that you have the right serum level for your medication, because zeolite might bind to some of your medication and bring down your serum concentrations. So please go to the store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the zeolite. That's the end of my transmission. I've told you how to detoxify your body, how to slow down the aging process, how to improve your immune system. We're in the cold season. People in New York are getting sick. I'm sure that people in your area in the United States are also getting sick. Take my advice. Get the supplements. Get on a healthy routine and improve your immune system. Thank you for listening, and have a nice day.